Now that I've put some mileage on my Brooks Glycerin 18s, I figured it was time to pop in and just give some initial thoughts on how I've enjoyed running in the new shoes. How's it going, beer runners? If you watched my initial unboxing video of my new Brooks Glycerins, then you know how excited I was to take these for a spin. This is my second pair of Brooks Glycerins, but I haven't owned them in quite a while. I do remember them being one of my favorite shoes that I had ever run in the past, so I was very excited to take these for a spin. You also may remember that I recently purchased a pair of Saucony Kinvaras, so I was interested I know they're totally different shoes meant for different purposes, but I was interested just to kind of do a side-by-side comparison, the initial thoughts of running in this shoe as opposed to my initial reactions trying on those Kinvaras. So with that being said, let's just go ahead and jump in. As I mentioned, I know these are not meant for the same types of runs as the Kinvara. I'm using these a lot more for those longer distance efforts where I'm worried about the fatigue in my legs and the pounding that my feet are gonna take. So I want this more cushioned ride, the cushion ride that the Glycerin offers for those longer distance, longer duration runs. To date, we are just under 40 miles on the Glycerins. They're at 36 right now, and just under half of those miles came from a long run this weekend, which I'll touch on a little bit later in the video. So these really are just initial thoughts. I'm very early in the career of these shoes. My last pair of Glycerins lasted, I think, about 550 miles, so plenty more to go on here, but I am truly enjoying the shoe. The first thing I'll talk about is just how they feel on your feet. These shoes really are designed for comfort, and you notice that as soon as you put them on. Comparing it a little bit to the Kinvara, if you watch my review of those shoes, you know I was worried when I first slipped those shoes on because of their form fit. It actually felt kind of constricting on my feet. That is not the case with the Glycerin. They are nice and snug around the collar or the cuff of the shoe. It's a nice snug and supportive and very cushioned feel around your ankle. Inside, it's a lot more roomier for your feet, which I personally enjoy. I tend not to lace my shoes very tightly. I like a more loose feel, and you definitely get those with the Brooks. I like that it doesn't feel like it's compressing on my foot. I guess this is a good time to mention one caveat for the review. I have had some issues with my feet in general, not from the Brooks. I actually credit the Brooks with helping me get past the issues that I've been having, but I think just from the buildup of running back-to-back, I ran a marathon and a half marathon in back-to-back weekends, was having some higher mileage weeks, and every once in a while I seem to go through these cycles where my feet just let me know, like, hey, we need a break. And usually I feel it. I start to get blisters where I don't normally get blisters, and I especially start to feel it in my toes. It's a really weird sensation, but it's usually my toes are almost like, they just seem so much more sensitive. I've been dealing with that for the last couple weeks, which has made running a little bit challenging, but I think because I've opted to wear the Glycerins for more of my runs, have that more cushion ride, it's allowed my feet to recover a little bit more quickly than they had been previously. The reason I bring that up as a caveat is because I will share that some of my initial reactions to the shoe, especially because the shape my feet were in, was I was worried about the fit of the shoe in a couple places in particular. One, on my second run in these shoes, I started to get a blister right at the back of my heel. Very small blisters on both feet. And again, they're new shoes. I wasn't sure if it was necessarily the fit of the shoes, if it was the socks that I was wearing. So I didn't write them off just yet. And I mentioned I went for that 14-mile run this weekend, had no issues at all. So I think, again, it was just the fatigue in my feet, wearing a new pair of shoes, not used to the fit, maybe wearing the wrong pair of socks, etc. Haven't had any issues with that since then. The other area I was concerned about is the kind of toe guard. It's pretty flexible, but it is a little bit more rigid than some of the other shoes that I've been wearing recently. And as I mentioned, my toes have been incredibly sore and incredibly sensitive. It was uncomfortable for the first couple runs that I went on. Again, my feet are in much better shape now, so I don't notice any issue, but I was worried about that initially. Since then though, especially on my run this weekend, again, I'm getting at that comfort feel that I mentioned where it's just a nice roomy fit. I don't have the pain in my toes anymore, so I'm not noticing that discomfort. And overall, the shoe just feels great on your feet. It feels very soft. It feels very cushioned. A lot more cushion than traditional running shoes, meant to kind of help your legs recover, which I certainly have appreciated these last couple weeks. And that, I guess, takes me into the second point of focus for the review, and that's just the feel of the actual shoe on the run. So not how it feels on your foot, but how your foot feels on the run in connection to the ground. And really, you don't feel a lot of the connection to the ground in these things. And I think that's sort of the point of the shoe. This DNA Loft foam sole is really meant to absorb the impact of the ground to protect your feet. And I definitely get that sense. I spent some time really focusing on the first couple runs, trying to focus on that feeling of the connection from foot to ground, feel the transition as I rolled through each step. And you definitely feel it if you focus, if you focus your attention on that. But if you're not focused on it, you don't really feel like you're running on anything at all. You don't feel the impact of the road. It feels a lot more soft, a lot more cushioned. But if you're looking for a shoe where you want to feel that connection to the road, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this, because that cushioning, that sole here, is really taking that out of the equation. Personally, for me, that's exactly what I want these shoes for. I've mentioned again and again and again, on those longer mileage, longer duration runs, I want a shoe that's going to absorb the impact and just help protect my feet, protect my leg on those workouts. And that definitely proved true for this weekend's long run. So I mentioned it was a little over a 14-mile long run with some 12-minute tempo splits in between. So I also got to mix in some speed training on these shoes, had no issues at all. I didn't notice the excess weight. My legs weren't feeling fatigued at the end. I mean, they're feeling the normal amount of fatigue from a tougher run, but not feeling the fatigue of like the excess weight of the shoe or anything like that. Overall, it was an incredibly comfortable ride, and I credit these shoes for how well my legs felt the next day. The day after that long run, I actually had to help my friend move up into a 4-story walk-up apartment in the city, and was very pleased with how remarkably well my legs were feeling that day, especially with the beating that they took carrying the furniture and things like that up into that apartment. So that pretty much covers the initial reaction. I'll be back with a much more in-depth review once I've put some more mileage, probably around the 100-mile mark, just to let you know how they're doing. But so far, they're holding up great. The only other thing that I'll touch on, it seems so insignificant, but just the laces that they use for these shoes. I really enjoy the feel of the laces. They have a little bit of a stretch to them. They're like a soft tubular lace. I've had shoes in the past where the laces are just way too long, which is a pain, or they're just hard to get a grip on. Again, like I said, it seems so silly, so trivial, but these laces just feel really good in your hands, easy to tie. And you also, I mentioned that I like to have a little bit of give in my shoes when I'm wearing them. You can pull these a little bit tighter than I normally would, because the laces have just a subtle little bit of flex to them. So that's something that I really appreciate. It's a minor detail. I think it just shows the level of detail that they go into, that they take into consideration when designing their shoes. So far, I'm really enjoying these. Like I said, still very new, less than 40 miles on the shoes, but I put them through a couple of tough workout tests. Looking forward to plenty more, and I will be back when I have some more information. Thank you for tuning in for the initial thoughts. If this is your first time here, I hope you'll like the video down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And that's it for today, so I'll see you next time. Cheers.